requirements that come in, we're kind of a joint clearinghouse for a variety of things that may come in with very different mission set needs or similar overlapping mission sets needs. So that's important for us to be able to look across the interagency with all the components and see where there's duality or commonality between the services. One of the things we've instituted is a body, which is our Requirements Oversight Council that we have at CWMD. That's a group of senior executives from all of the agencies that I just rattled off, who will help us to determine what's important within the CWMD sphere for where we should be investing, spending money, and going after projects that are joint in nature that can deliver the most return on investment. So we've put that together over the last year or so. We're refining that, making that a more mature body. So there are limited dollars that we have to spend, so trying to streamline the requirements are an important aspect of what we do going forward. I've noticed, I've only been in the job the same as Lisa, about 8 months, but if I look back to a year, 2 years ago with the requirements, we were focused heavily on recapitalization of our RADNU capabilities. We had a lot of requirements to improve the RADNU capabilities that exist. There's been tremendous investment over the last 10 to 15 years there. But the new requirements now are for the chem and bio detection capabilities that some of my colleagues have already hit on, and need for being agile as we go forward and look at anything from trace detection to how do we look inside the box of something that we may want to look at a postal facility. So lots of requirements coming in. We've probably got over 25 within the last 6 months from our components of things that we're looking at trying to close gaps on. And you know, what we do once we get something in, it may not just be you go buy something. We're looking at policy, doctrine solutions. There may be training solutions that a component needs. So I think, big picture, if you're someone who may be able to bring a training solution to a CWMD problem set to get our operators more savvy on how to use equipment or how to use a process, we'd be open to those types of ideas as well. We work closely with Rich and the R&D folks to understand if there's something commercial off the shelf that we could use for the capability, or does it need to go to R&D and S&T for development. And then again, I mentioned the jointness of what we're trying to do. There may be big problems that require us to work through the Joint Requirements Council for major acquisition development and documentation and all that kind of stuff. So it's a process, but I believe it starts with the requirement, not asking for a specific piece of gear, but what's your true capability gap that perhaps multiple pieces of equipment could shore up that gap. So try to think of a requirement in terms of a capability need, not necessarily a certain piece of equipment. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Kalpesh and see if you have any questions.
Thanks, John. I appreciate all my panel members for their opening remarks. So Lisa, I'm going to start off with you. In your opening remark, you mentioned about maritime and maritime environment being different than the land environment. So if you can elaborate a little bit more and maybe provide more insight how that maritime environment is different than the land environment, and then we can go to Tom, and then Tom can talk more about his land environment.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think everyone here is very much aware, maritime water. And water is very destructive, but when you're out at the ocean or you're in some of that, it's salt water. And salt water is very corrosive. So two things that kind of go with that. Like I said, with the water and its corrosion, everything deteriorates. And I think even you mentioned your time with the Coast Guard, you'd come out and you'd be pouring the salt water out of it. So it's got to be robust. It's got to be able to water seal it and endure that corrosion that takes place with that. But then also just endure water in general, because I don't know if you all recall, but about 2-3 months ago, there was on news of one of our boarding teams jumping onto the submersible, and down underneath was a pilot. I think it was cocaine was down in the bottom of that as well. And there's water everywhere going on, and so you have to realize that as they're jumping, if they slide off or if they've got any of those kind of systems on them, then immediately it becomes non-viable. So then that's the other piece that leads to it. So it's not like they can just say, hey buddy, hand me something else. There's the reach back capability. They're limited on what they can carry on them because they're mobile, the boarding teams. So imagine your body and what you've got to have packed around you. When you deploy, when you're on the maritime, you deploy with what is on yourself. You don't get to have the bag or the roller cart that comes with you, or the truck that's 2 blocks away that can go run someone back to go get that. You have to be all-encompassing on the self. You're a self-deployed capability. So the capability isn't just the equipment that's on them. The capability is the whole being, because that's how they deploy with that. The next thing is like I just said, the operations. They're on water, they're on boats, they're on cutters, so they're trying to balance themselves while they're on these kind of deployable assets.